Lieutenant Commander Sarah Chen watched the alien patrol pass by the barracks window, their segmented exoskeletons gleaming under New Arcadia's artificial lighting. 3 months since the invasion, and the sight of the Veridans still made her stomach clench. Not with fear, with calculation. "They're becoming predictable," she murmured to Master Sergeant Okonkwo, who stood at parade rest beside her. "Third patrol this hour, exact same formation, exact same path." Okonkwo's deep voice rumbled quietly. "They're following standard security algorithms. The Veridans believe in perfect systems." "Perfect systems make perfect targets," Chen replied, a lesson drilled into her at the Earth Defense Academy years ago. Outside, rain began to fall on New Arcadia's central compound. The aliens scuttled faster along their patrol route, their sensitivity to water and other detail Chen had filed away. The colony world had been humanity's pride, a terraformed outpost with thriving agriculture and a promising industrial sector. Now it served as little more than a trophy for the crystalline invaders. The door to the barracks slid open with a pneumatic hiss. Private Jenkins entered, shaking water from his maintenance uniform. He gave the officers a quick nod, casual enough to seem innocent to any watching aliens, deliberate enough to signal news. "Lieutenant Commander," he said, loud enough for the monitoring devices to pick up. "Finished cleaning the atmospheric regulators in the East Quadrant. Those things collect dust like nobody's business." Chen nodded, maintaining the facade of mundane conversation. "Thank you, Private. Get yourself dried off." Jenkins moved closer, pretending to adjust his boot. His voice dropped to a near whisper. "They're rotating the guard shifts. Cutting personnel by 30%. Something about resource allocation." "Interesting." Chen kept her expression neutral. The Veridans were getting comfortable, growing confident in their control. It was exactly what she'd been waiting for. "Get some rest, Jenkins," she said at normal volume. "Tomorrow's another thrilling day of maintenance duty." The soldiers around them chuckled appropriately. To the Veridans monitoring their conversations, it would sound like resignation, perhaps tinged with the sarcasm aliens often misinterpreted. None of them would notice the spark in Jenkins' eyes, or the way Okonkwo's posture had subtly straightened. Later that night, after lights out, Chen lay on her bunk staring at the ceiling. The Veridans had allowed the human soldiers to maintain their military structure, a psychological kindness, according to Commander Xylix. In reality, it was the invaders' first mistake. They'd kept the chain of command intact, preserving the very framework needed for resistance. Their second mistake was even more fundamental. They didn't understand human nature. The aliens valued efficiency and purpose. Every Veridan had a role, a function, a place in their collective. The concept of downtime was foreign to them. So when they restricted the human garrison to basic maintenance tasks and long hours of confinement, they thought they were neutralizing a threat. They couldn't have been more wrong. Humans, Chen knew, were at their most dangerous when bored. Throughout history, confined soldiers had become experts at improvisation. The Veridans had given them the greatest weapons of all, time and underestimation. A soft tap came from the bunk below. Specialist Wong's signal that the night patrols had begun their rounds. Chen closed her eyes, not to sleep but to think. 200 soldiers under her command, each with specialized training and growing resentment. The aliens had left them their uniforms, their hierarchy, and their proximity to critical systems, all in the name of maintaining order and psychological stability. The irony wasn't lost on Chen. The very measures intended to keep them docile were providing the structure for rebellion. Tomorrow, she would begin Phase 1, the observation game. a seemingly innocent pastime that would map every weakness in the Veridon occupation. As she drifted towards sleep, Chen smiled in the darkness. The aliens would learn too late the danger of leaving humans with nothing but time on their hands and vengeance in their hearts. The human barracks had transformed over the past 3 months. What began as Spartan quarters now buzzed with activity disguised as mere recreation. Lieutenant Commander Chen surveyed the main hall with carefully concealed pride as she guided the Veridon inspector through the weekly check. As you can see, morale remains stable, Chen explained to the tall, chitinous figure beside her. We've implemented structured leisure time as per your regulations. The Veridon inspector, designation ZEX-17, clicked its mandibles in what Chen had learned was their equivalent of dismissive acknowledgement. Its 4 iridescent eyes scanned the room, recording everything yet understanding nothing of significance. Your species requires excessive mental stimulation, ZEX-17 observed. The collective finds this inefficient, but accommodates your biological limitations. Chen nodded with practiced deference. We appreciate the consideration. Across the room, Corporal Rodriguez had organized what appeared to be a simple card game. 10 soldiers hunched over makeshift playing cards crafted from meal ration packaging. To the Veridon observer, it looked like mindless entertainment. In reality, Rodriguez was conducting a course on lock mechanisms. Each card depicted a different type of security system used throughout the compound, drawn from memory by Specialist Wong, who had been assigned to cleaning detail in the restricted sections. Your time is better spent in productive labor, ZEX-17 commented, mandibles clicking faster in what Chen recognized as irritation. Games help maintain cognitive function, Chen replied smoothly. Prevents depression and ensures better work performance. The alien didn't argue further. The Veridon collective considered human psychology a minor logistical problem, nothing more. They permitted these activities because managing human mental health issues would require more resources than simply allowing controlled recreation. Near the far wall, Private Jenkins had drawn a small crowd. His fingers moved with practiced precision as he demonstrated what seemed like a dexterity game, picking up and repositioning small objects while blindfolded. What the Veridons didn't realize was that Jenkins was teaching the others how to identify, disassemble, and reassemble Veridon technology by touch alone. 43 seconds, announced Master Sergeant Okonkwo, who monitored the exercise with a stopwatch fashioned from a modified food timer. 2 seconds faster than yesterday. Jenkins removed his blindfold, grinning. I can get it under 40. The Veridon inspector's attention shifted toward them. Chen smoothly interposed herself. A harmless competition, she explained, helps maintain manual dexterity for their maintenance duties. ZEX-17 seemed satisfied with this explanation and moved on. The aliens' fundamental misunderstanding of human nature was becoming their greatest vulnerability. They saw these activities as primitive time-filling, not realizing that humans turn play into practice, boredom into innovation. Later that evening, after the inspections concluded, Chen met with her senior staff in the showers, one of the few places where water noise interfered with Veridon audio surveillance. Progress report, she said quietly as the showers ran around them. Specialist Wong spoke first, her voice barely audible above the water. I've identified pattern variations in all 3 guard shifts. The night patrols have a 7-minute gap in Sector 4. Okonkwo nodded. My team has completed memory mapping of the ventilation system. We can move 3 people undetected between the barracks and the communications hub. Rodriguez's group has mastered 5 of the 8 security lock types, added Jenkins, wiping water from his face. "Given another week, we'll have workable bypasses for all of them." Chen allowed herself a small smile. "And the MacLever division?" Sergeant Garcia, their resident chemist, leaned in. "We've successfully synthesized the compound from the maintenance supplies. It temporarily disrupts their optical sensors, creates a blind spot for about 20 seconds. We've tested it on discarded equipment parts." "Perfect," Chen said. "Keep developing your skills, but remember, as far as the Veridons are concerned, we're just playing games to pass the time." As they dispersed, returning to their bunks in small groups to avoid suspicion, Chen felt a growing certainty. The Veridons saw humans as simple, predictable creatures requiring basic stimulation to remain functional. They failed to understand that human boredom was not a state of mental shutdown, but rather a powerful catalyst for creativity and problem-solving. Their prison was slowly becoming their training ground, their captivity the very forge of their liberation. The mess hall buzzed with conversation as soldiers collected their evening rations. Lieutenant Commander Chen sat at the center table, her position giving her a clear view of both the room and the Veridon guards stationed by the exits. Their evening ritual was about to begin. What appeared to the aliens as simple mealtime chatter, but had evolved into the most sophisticated intelligence operation of Chen's career. "What did you notice today?" she asked, her voice carrying just enough to reach nearby tables, but not loud enough to draw unwanted attention. Hands raised around the room, eager to contribute. Chen nodded to Specialist Wong first. Commander Xylix's breathing apparatus adjustment occurs precisely every 4 hours. Wong reported between bites of the bland nutritional paste the Veridons provided. There's a 15-second window where the filtration system recalibrates. During that time, his auditory receptors lose approximately 20% sensitivity. Chen nodded, committing the detail to memory. "Useful. Anyone else?" Corporal Patel raised his hand. "The security console in the East Wing has a manufacturing defect. When the temperature drops below 20 degrees Celsius, the biometric scanner develops a 3-second delay before processing." "And how did you discover this?" Chen asked, knowing the answer but performing for any listening devices. Patel shrugged. "I clean that section during the night cycle when they lower the environmental controls. My hands get cold, and I notice the scanner takes longer to reject my prints." Around the room, soldiers absorbed this information while appearing to focus on their meals. Each detail, seemingly inconsequential on its own, formed part of a complex mosaic, a complete picture of Veridon vulnerabilities and operational patterns. Private Rivera spoke next. "The supply shuttles follow a new schedule. They're now arriving every 5 days instead of 7. The offloading procedure leaves the South Cargo Bay unsupervised for approximately 12 minutes during shift change." Chen acknowledged this with a thoughtful expression. "Interesting. I wonder if they're planning to rotate more personnel." The conversation continued, each soldier contributing observations gleaned from their assigned duties. The Veridons had made a critical error in their occupation strategy. They distributed humans throughout the facility for maintenance and support tasks, giving them access to nearly every system and sector. Later that night, after lights out was called, and the barracks plunged into dimness, Master Sergeant Okonkwo slipped from his bunk. With practiced silence, he made his way to the center of the room where a small group had already gathered. From his pocket, he produced a collection of items, bootlaces, buttons from uniforms, small metal clips salvaged from their meal trays. "Tonight we memorize the command center," he whispered. With swift, practiced movements, his fingers arranged the items on the floor, creating a detailed floor plan of the Veridon command hub. 20 soldiers formed a circle around the makeshift model, committing every detail to memory, entry points, console positions, guard stations, ventilation access. The primary control terminal is here. Okonkwo indicated with a button placed precisely in the center of the layout. Commander Xylix occupies this station during the day cycle. During night operations, they reduce staffing to 3 officers. Specialist Wong pointed to a small metal clip positioned near what represented the main entrance. This security scanner has the same fluctuation issue as the one in the East Wing. Temperature sensitive. Private Jenkins studied the layout with intense focus. The maintenance access panel behind the communications array, is it still using the standard Veridon encryption, or have they upgraded? Standard, confirmed Corporal Rodriguez. They don't see maintenance systems as security priorities. A soft whistle from the lookout station near the door alerted them to approaching footsteps, a surprise inspection. In seconds, the model vanished, components disappearing into pockets as soldiers casually resumed what appeared to be a simple string game. By the time the Veridon guard entered, the evidence had disappeared completely. The alien surveyed the scene with suspicious eyes, its posture suggesting confusion at finding humans engaged in such a primitive pastime during rest hours. Difficulty sleeping, Chen explained from her bunk, having smoothly joined the group. Simple games help calm the mind. The guard chittered something in its native language before departing, clearly dismissing the activity as another peculiar human coping mechanism. Once alone again, Chen exchanged knowing glances with her officers. The Veridon's arrogance was becoming their greatest asset. While the aliens saw only bored soldiers playing childish games, the humans were building a perfect mental map of their prison and planning exactly how to take it apart. Steam filled the shower facility, providing both cover for conversation and interference for the Veridon surveillance systems. Sergeant Garcia stood with her back to the running water, holding a small vial of clear liquid up to the light. A circle of soldiers gathered around her, their expressions a mixture of fascination and determination. The compound needs 12 hours to stabilize, Garcia explained, her voice low, but clear enough to be heard over the rushing water. Before joining the military, she had been a chemical engineer specializing in synthetic compounds. Now that expertise was becoming their most valuable asset. Once it does, we have a substance that temporarily disrupts their optical sensors. Private Lee raised an eyebrow. How temporarily? 20 seconds, give or take, Garza replied. More than enough time if used strategically. Chen watched from the edge of the group, impressed by how quickly her MacGyver division had developed. What had begun as a joke, naming their improvised engineering team after an ancient entertainment character, had evolved into a sophisticated skunkworks operation. What's the production capacity? Chen asked. Garcia calculated quickly. With our current access to cleaning supplies, we can produce enough for 3 operations per week without raising suspicion. Any more than that, and the Veridons might notice the missing inventory. Chen nodded, then turned to Corporal Patel, who had spread a damp towel on the bench with several objects arranged upon it. "Show me," she said. Patel grinned, picking up what appeared to be a standard-issue comb. With a precise twist, the teeth separated from the handle, revealing a thin metal tool inside. "Lockpick," he explained. "Works on the interior doors of the compound. Not the high-security areas yet, but we're getting there." He moved to the next item, a seemingly normal stylus provided for maintenance record keeping. "This one's special," Patel said with quiet pride. The Veridons use a specific alloy in their control panels that conducts their bioelectric signatures. I extracted trace amounts from the recycling center and incorporated it into the stylus tip. Meaning, Chen prompted. Meaning it can activate their control panels. Basic functions only. Lights, doors, environmental controls. But it's a start. Around them, the improvisation continued. Private Jenkins had discovered that the fiber optic filaments in Veridon communication systems could be extracted and rewoven into nearly invisible tripwires. Specialist Wong had perfected a method of creating adhesive from the nutritional supplements and uniform dye. Even the recreational items permitted by their captors had been repurposed. Playing cards thinned and strengthened to serve as makeshift blades, exercise bands modified to create tension-based launching mechanisms. The best part, Peitel added, carefully rewrapping his collection in the towel, is that none of these register on their security scans. They're looking for conventional weapons, not repurposed everyday items. Chen felt a surge of pride. Humans had always excelled at adaptation, at finding unexpected solutions to impossible problems. The Veridons, with their rigid thinking and technological dependence, couldn't conceive of the threat developing right under their mandibles. As the meeting concluded and soldiers began to disperse, a Veridon medical officer appeared at the shower facility entrance, its sensory appendages twitching at the steam. Human hygiene rituals are excessive. It chittered disapprovingly. Water consumption above allocation. Chen stepped forward, the picture of compliance. My apologies, officer. The heat helps with muscle tension after work shifts. Improves human productivity. The alien made a dismissive gesture, mandibles clicking rapidly. Inefficient species. Complete hygiene protocols within acceptable parameters. After the Veridon departed, Chen exchanged knowing glances with Garcia and Peitel. The aliens monitored water usage, but never questioned why humans preferred communal shower times or extended steam sessions. Their failure to understand human behavior was creating perfect blind spots for resistance planning. Later that evening, a junior Veridon security officer reported unusual chemical scents from the human quarters to Commander Xylix. The commander flicked his sensory appendages in annoyance. Their biological processes produce many offensive odors, Xylix responded. All within expected parameters for the species. Return to your post. The junior officer complied, unaware that the unusual scent was actually the byproduct of a compound that could temporarily blind Veridon optical sensors. A compound being produced right under their translucent noses by soldiers they had dismissed as primitive and predictable. In the human barracks, the MacIver division continued their work, turning boredom and confinement into the tools of liberation. The explosion rocked the entire facility, sending vibrations through the floor plates and causing the lights to flicker momentarily. Lieutenant Commander Chen had been reviewing maintenance schedules with Master Sergeant Okonkwo when the blast hit. Both officers exchanged a quick glance. This wasn't part of their plan, but it might be exactly the opportunity they needed. Alarm frequencies blared in both human and Veridon, ranges as emergency protocols activated throughout the compound. Chen and Okonkwo rushed to the barracks entrance where they found Veridon guards in disarray, their normally precise movements now frantic and uncoordinated. Commander Xylix appeared, his exoskeleton plates shifting to a darker hue, a sign of stress in the Veridon species. Chen had never seen the commander display such agitation. Primary coolant rupture in the power core, Xylix announced, his translation device barely keeping up with his rapid speech patterns. All non-essential personnel must remain confined until... "Commander," Chen interrupted, stepping forward with perfect military posture. "My people have training in emergency response and basic engineering. We can help stabilize the situation." Silex's compound eyes focused on her, sensory appendages twitching as he calculated options. Chen could almost see the conflict in the alien commander, his strict protocols versus the immediate need for additional personnel. "The core temperature is rising," reported a Veridon technician, rushing toward them. "Cooling systems failing across multiple sectors. Estimated time to critical overload, 3 hours. That decided it. Your assistance will be permitted," Silex declared, "under strict supervision." "Of course," Chen agreed smoothly. "My people will follow all protocols." Within minutes, Chen had mobilized her soldiers, assigning them to strategic positions throughout the facility. Each team was paired with Veridum supervisors, but in the chaos, the aliens were focused on the emergency rather than monitoring their human assistants too closely. "Specialist Wong, take your team to the communications hub," Chen ordered. "Monitor emergency channels and coordinate response efforts." Wong nodded, understanding the underlying directive. Her real mission was to access the communication systems and potentially establish contact with resistance forces outside the compound. "Jenkins, your engineering expertise is needed at the armory," Chen continued. "Make sure the security systems remain operational during the power fluctuations." Jenkins saluted crisply, already planning how to catalog and potentially compromise the weapons storage. As teams dispersed throughout the facility, Chen found herself in the central command center alongside Commander Silex. Emergency lighting cast an eerie blue glow over the alien technology, creating shadows that danced across the walls as technicians moved frantically between stations. "Your species adapts quickly to crisis," Silex observed, watching as human soldiers seamlessly integrated into the emergency response. "We've had plenty of practice," Chen replied truthfully. "Humanity's history is filled with disasters, natural and self-inflicted." The Veridon commander made a gesture Chen interpreted as acknowledgement. "The collective studies your historical records. Your species survives despite inefficient design and limited technological development." Ken bit back a smile. Even now, facing a potential core meltdown, the alien couldn't help but express superiority. That persistent underestimation would be their downfall. Hours stretched into days as the crisis continued. The coolant system proved more extensively damaged than initially assessed, requiring complete reconfiguration of the power distribution network. Throughout the emergency, human soldiers worked alongside Veridon technicians, gaining unprecedented access to systems and information normally kept strictly off limits. Corporal Rodriguez, assigned to security monitoring, managed to clone the biometric signatures of 3 high-ranking Veridon officers during a shift change. Sergeant Garcia, working in environmental control, identified the chemical composition of the atmosphere the aliens found optimal, valuable intelligence for potential future leverage. Most crucially, Private Jenkins and his team, while securing the armory from potential breaches, had systematically catalogued every weapon and subtly modified the security locks to respond to human biometrics in addition to Veridon signatures. The aliens, focused entirely on the power core crisis, never noticed these small but critical changes. By the time the emergency was declared over, 5 days after the initial explosion, the humans had achieved more infiltration than 6 months of careful planning could have accomplished. As the Veridon guards began escorting soldiers back to their barracks, Chen caught Okonkwo's eye across the command center and gave an almost imperceptible nod. Phase 1 of Operation Rube Goldberg was complete, and they hadn't even needed to trigger it themselves. Sometimes, Chen reflected, opportunity arrived in the form of genuine accidents. The skilled tactician simply needed to recognize and exploit the opening when it appeared. Commander Xylix approached as Chen prepared to leave the command center. Your assistance was adequate. The alien acknowledged, the closest thing to gratitude the Veridans ever expressed. Return to standard protocols. Happy to help, Commander, Chen replied with perfect professionalism. After all, we're all stuck on this planet together. As she turned away, Chen allowed herself a small smile. Not for much longer, she thought. Not for much longer. Lieutenant Commander Chen sat in the mess hall, methodically tapping her spoon against her bowl in what appeared to be mindless fidgeting. 3 quick taps, 2 slow, 3 quick. Around her, soldiers casually repeated the pattern, on tables, against cups with idle fingers. To any Veridan observer, it looked like nothing more than an annoying human habit. In reality, it was the signal they'd been waiting for. Operation begins at moonrise. The aftermath of the coolant system crisis had created the perfect cover for accelerating their plans. The Veridans, having allowed humans access to critical systems during the emergency, were now struggling to properly reset security protocols. Gaps had appeared in their once impenetrable defense network, gaps that Chen's people had carefully widened during the chaos. Nutritional supplement seems bland today, commented Specialist Wong, sitting down across from Chen. The casual observation carried coded meaning. Their contact with the resistance outside the compound had been successful. At least it's consistent, Chen replied, completing the confirmation sequence. Unlike the weather lately. Their communication network had evolved beyond anything the Veridans could detect. During the emergency, Wong had gained access to the facility's external lighting controls. Each night, maintenance checks on the perimeter illumination now included brief patterns visible from the nearby hillsides where resistance observers waited. Laundry hung in the yard to dry was arranged in configurations that, from above, formed simple coded messages. Even the timing of routine water discharges from the environmental systems carried information in their duration and frequency. Corporal Rodriguez approached, collecting empty trays. Permission to organize recreation period this evening, Commander. Granted. Chen nodded. The usual activities. Rodriguez moved on, but the exchange had confirmed that their improvised equipment was ready and distributed. The recreation period would serve as their final briefing before execution. Private Jenkins entered the mess hall late, his maintenance uniform bearing fresh stains. He caught Chen's eye briefly, tapping his fingers against his leg in a distinct pattern. The armory modifications were complete and verified. That afternoon, Chen observed the Veridan garb rotations with practiced casualness. The aliens had returned to their standard algorithms after the emergency, their confidence in their technological superiority unshaken despite the recent crisis. They never considered that humans might have used the opportunity to study them even more closely, to identify new weaknesses in their systems and protocols. Back in the barracks, as evening approached, Chen inventoried their arsenal. Not a single conventional weapon, yet every soldier was armed in ways the Veridans couldn't comprehend. Cleaning solution compounds that temporarily blinded alien optical sensors. Rewired communication devices disguised as personal effects. Tools fashioned from kitchen implements and maintenance equipment. The ingenuity born of boredom and confinement had transformed everyday items into instruments of liberation. Final checks, she instructed her team leaders during the evening recreation period. Voices were kept low, covered by the ambient noise of allowed games and activities. Wong, communication status. ready. Resistance forces are positioned at the 3 extraction points. They'll move on our signal. Okonkwo, infiltration routes. Mapped and memorized. Teams can access all primary targets within 4 minutes of initiation. Jenkins security systems. Modified as planned. Biometric locks will accept our signatures for exactly 20 minutes, starting at the signal. After that, they'll reset to Veridon, only to cover our tracks. Garcia countermeasures. Distributed. Each team has enough compound to neutralize twice their expected opposition. Chen nodded, satisfied. 6 months of forced idleness had given them the most precious resource in warfare: time to plan, observe, and prepare. The Veridons had provided their own undoing by underestimating the human capacity for adaptation and ingenuity when faced with boredom. As the soldiers dispersed, returning to seemingly innocent activities under the watchful eyes of their captors, Chen allowed herself a moment of reflection. The Veridon occupation forces had studied human history, human biology, and human technology, but they had failed to understand the most dangerous human trait of all, the ability to transform limitation into opportunity. Night fell over the compound. In her bunk, Chen watched the shadows lengthen and waited for moonrise. The time for silent communication and hidden preparation was almost over. Soon, the Veridons would learn just how deadly bored human soldiers could be. The first moon of New Arcadia crested the horizon, casting a pale blue glow through the barracks windows. Lieutenant Commander Chen pressed the small device disguised as a water purification tablet to her lips. "Begin Operation Rube Goldberg," she whispered. Throughout the facility, humans stationed at key positions activated their assigned protocols with clockwork precision. In the East Wing, Private Jenkins used Corporal Patel's modified stylus to trigger a microfracture in a secondary cooling pipe. Nothing critical, just enough to demand immediate attention. The facility's alert system chimed with a low-priority warning. 2 Veridon guards immediately detached from their patrol route, mandibles kicking in irritation as they moved to investigate. 30 seconds later, across the compound in the west quadrant, Specialist Wong initiated a power fluctuation in the lighting grid, causing illumination to drop by 15%. Again, nothing critical, just enough to require investigation. "Excellent," Chen murmured, watching the security monitors they tapped into during the earlier emergency. The Veridon response was exactly as predicted: algorithmic, by the book, and utterly predictable. 3 minutes after the first alert, Sergeant Garcia's team activated the environmental system modifications they'd spent weeks preparing. The southern barracks, which housed no humans but served as a checkpoint for Veridon security forces, began receiving air with a slightly higher oxygen content. To humans, the difference would be unnoticeable, but Veridon respiratory biology was more sensitive. Within minutes, the guards stationed there began experiencing mild disorientation. Nothing they would immediately identify as an attack, just enough to slow reaction times and cloud decision-making. The beauty of Operation Rube Goldberg lay in its subtlety. No single malfunction appeared serious enough to trigger full security protocols, but together they created a symphony of distractions that systematically pulled Veridon forces away from critical junctions and command centers. Phase 1 complete, reported Master Sergeant Okonkwo through the improvised communication network. Proceeding to Phase 2. Chen checked her makeshift timepiece, crafted from components scavenged during maintenance duties. 7 minutes since initiation, right on schedule. Throughout the compound, more malfunctions began to manifest. A waste reclamation unit overflowed in the north sector. Temperature regulation failed in the communications hub. Security doors in the vehicle bay began cycling open and closed at random intervals. Each issue required attention, each pulled Veridon personnel away from their standard posts, and each had been carefully engineered to appear as an isolated system failure. Commander Xylix's voice echoed through the facility's announcement system, the translation software unable to fully mask the stress harmonics in his native speech. All technical personnel report to Central Command. Security details maintain positions. Chen smiled. The Veridon commander was attempting to centralize his response team, exactly as they'd hoped. By pulling technical expertise to Central Command, he was thinning resources throughout the rest of the facility. Phase 2 indicators positive. She whispered into her communicator. Proceed to Phase 3. This was where Operation Rube Goldberg truly earned its name. The first 2 phases had been designed to create confusion and disperse Veridon forces. Phase 3 would exploit the gaps in their defense through a cascade of precisely timed maneuvers. The first move came from the maintenance tunnels, where Corporal Rodriguez led a team armed with Garcia's optical disruptor compound. They emerged near a secondary communication relay, neutralized the 2 disoriented guards with quick applications of the compound to their visual sensors, and gained control of the local network node. Within seconds, they began broadcasting false security alerts to further fragment the Veridon response. Simultaneously, Jenkins' engineering team executed their part of the plan at the armory. The modified security locks responded to their human biometrics exactly as designed. The door slid open silently, revealing racks of Veridon weaponry. They moved with practiced efficiency, securing the most effective non-lethal options, neural disruptors and immobilization fields that would incapacitate without killing. Chen had been clear on that point. Their goal was liberation, not extermination. The Veridons might be their captors, but wholesale slaughter wasn't the human way, at least not her way. In the command center, Commander Xylix was beginning to recognize that the multiple system failures followed a pattern. His compound eyes shifted rapidly between monitoring stations as realization dawned. This is a coordinated. He began, but never finished the sentence. The lights went out, plunging the command center into darkness for precisely 3 seconds before emergency illumination activated. In that brief window, Chen's strike team entered through 3 separate access points, deployed Garcia's compound on the Veridon guards, and secured the room's perimeter. When the lights returned, Chen stood before the startled Commander Xylix, holding one of his own neural disruptors. "I believe," she said calmly, "it's time we discussed new terms for our continued coexistence on New Arcadia." Commander Xylix stood motionless in the center of what had been his command center, 4 iridescent eyes fixed on Lieutenant Commander Chen. His mandibles clicked rapidly in what the humans had learned to recognize as extreme agitation. "Impossible," he finally said, the translation device rendering his chittering speech into a flat monotone that couldn't capture the disbelief in his native vocalizations. "Your species lacks the technological capacity for this level of coordination." Chen smiled, gesturing around the room where her soldiers had secured every station, every exit, and every communication terminal. "That was your first mistake, Commander. You confused technology with intelligence." Through the viewport, the blue moonlight illuminated the compound, now largely under human control. Teams of soldiers moved with precision, securing sector after sector using the very access codes and systems knowledge they'd gleaned during 6 months of patient observation. "You had no weapons," Xylix protested, his exoskeleton plates darkening in distress. "We had plenty of weapons," Chen corrected him. "Just not the kind you recognized." She set down the neural disruptor and picked up a simple maintenance tool modified with components from the Veridon's own systems. Humans have always excelled at improvisation. It's how we survived on Earth before we developed advanced technology. Master Sergeant Okonkwo entered the command center, his expression professionally neutral despite the triumph of the moment. All primary objectives secured, Commander, he reported to Chen. Casualties minimal. 3 Veridon guards required medical attention for compound exposure, but all are stable. Chen nodded with satisfaction. And the external resistance forces? In position at the perimeter. They've neutralized the automated defense grid using the access codes we provided. Through the command center's communication system came reports of similar successes throughout the compound. The precision of Operation Rube Goldberg had exceeded even Chen's expectations. The Veridon Occupation Force, superior in technology, training and physical capability, had been systematically outmaneuvered by humans armed with nothing but everyday items and the dangerous creativity born of forced idleness. Specialist Wong approached with a data tablet displaying incoming transmissions. Veridon reinforcement vessels detected in orbit, Commander. They're requesting landing clearance. Perfect timing, Chen remarked. She turned to the communication terminal and activated the facility-wide broadcast system. This is Lieutenant Commander Sarah Chen of the Earth Defense Force. The new Arcadia compound is now under human control. All Veridon personnel are instructed to remain in place. You will not be harmed if you comply. She then switched to an external channel, addressing the approaching Veridon ships. To the Veridon fleet in orbit, the defense systems of this facility are now under our command and recalibrated to target your vessel signatures. Additionally, we have secured your ground forces. I suggest we discuss terms for a peaceful resolution. Commander Xylix watched this exchange with what could only be described as shock, his translator struggling to find human emotional equivalents for his state. How? He finally asked. We monitored every communication, every movement. We restricted your access to all technology. Chen approached him, close enough that the alien commander could see the determination in her eyes. You gave us the one resource that makes humans most dangerous, Commander. You gave us time to think with nothing else to do. She gestured to Private Jenkins, who stepped forward holding what appeared to be a child's string game created from bootlaces, the same recreation the Veridons had dismissed countless times during inspections. With quick, practiced movements, Jenkins manipulated the strings into a perfect representation of the compound's defense grid. While your guards watched us play games, we were building mental maps of your facility, Chen explained. While you monitored our official communications, we developed a dozen alternative methods to coordinate. While you restricted our access to technology, we learned to repropose the simplest items into tools and weapons. On the main view screen, the lead Veridon vessel maintained its position, waiting for instructions from the ground command that had suddenly gone silent. Your species operates on patterns and algorithms, Chen continued. Predictable, efficient, logical. But humans, she smiled, humans thrive in chaos and constraint. Boredom doesn't dull our minds, it sharpens them. Commander Xylix's translator finally found the words for his emotional state. Profound recalculation. The collective will not accept this insurrection, he warned. They'll have to, Chen replied calmly, because we're offering something more valuable than conquest, a lesson. Underestimating humans is a mistake you can only afford to make once. As dawn broke over New Arcadia, the message transmitted to the Veridon Collective High Command was simple but profound. Critical warning to all occupation forces in human territories. Human military personnel must never be left without directed purpose. Their natural state of boredom leads to unnatural states of innovation. Idle humans are the deadliest force in the known galaxy.